What can I say about The Last Jedi that hasn't already been said? Among Star Wars fans, it's not at all a stretch to say this film is the most divisive in the series. When I first saw the film, I was actually really impressed. I thought the film did something a little different from the blatantly derivative Force Awakens. I thought the movie looked really great, and overall, I didn't really have any negative feelings towards it. I still don't have any kind of burning hatred for The Last Jedi. That being said, it wasn't really a movie I was interested in revisiting after I watched it once. What I have been interested in is the passionate commentary of the film's most vehement detractors. The number of fan made videos on this subject is innumerable, and now I feel like I need to throw my hat into the ring. Politics certainly plays a big role in both the internal and external world of this film, and the overt or authoritarian subtext contained in The Last Jedi is staggering. That being said, what is authoritarianism? According to the dictionary definition, authoritarianism is the enforcement or advocacy of strict obedience to authority at the expense of personal freedom, or the lack of concern for the wishes or opinions of others. For the remainder of this video, I'm going to take you on a journey that demonstrates exactly how the themes, marketing campaign, and overall cultural narrative of The Last Jedi serve as the perfect embodiment of authoritarian propaganda. So it's no secret that Star Wars has one of the most dedicated fan bases of any IP in the history of entertainment. I myself was caught up in the fervor back in 1999 with the release of the prequel trilogy. While those films missed the mark for many at the time, people could criticize the prequel trilogy openly and experience none of the backlash we see in modern times. Even benign criticisms of the film are sometimes lumped into what is described as toxic fandom, which creators and critics are wont to lump detractors of The Last Jedi into. In a review of The Last Jedi written by Matthew Rosa of Salon, toxic nerd culture is cited as rejecting the inclusion of John Boyega in the most recent Star Wars trilogy for racist reasons. Toxic nerd culture is continuously cited as antagonistic to actors like Boyega, Daisy Ridley, and Kelly Marie Tran, yet numerical figures or data are never cited in these claims. How many online racist trolls exist, and to what extent do they harass these actors? In a data-driven world, I find it surprising to see a plethora of writers make these claims with no data to back it up. In the absence of data, I suppose it is up to the purveyors of an authoritarian narrative to tell us just how big a problem racism within the Star Wars fan base really is. Guilting audiences into watching a film is nothing new. We saw this the previous year with Ghostbusters 2016. If one did not wish to watch that film, bigotry or sexism almost certainly had to be at play, according to writers in corporate media. No other explanation was feasible in the least. The truth is, no one is obligated to watch or like any film. The threat of being negatively labeled as a racist or sexist for a mere dissenting opinion is a clear authoritarian tactic. Centralized power structures feed off subservience. Star Wars is an established brand that is guaranteed to make money no matter how poor the films are. Therefore, the creation of an inferior product and the insistence the audience accept it qualifies The Last Jedi as a propaganda tool of an authoritarian regime. On to the formalistic criticism of The Last Jedi. Like its predecessor, The Force Awakens, I find it very interesting the new Star Wars trilogy rewrites its own history and ignores the destruction of the Empire. The First Order is exactly what the Empire was in the original trilogy with a new label. Is the film trying to suggest that authoritarianism is inevitable? I think so. How does a power like the First Order rise to such incredible dominance in less than a generation? Out of the ashes of a despised authoritarian regime, no less. Either Leia Organa is the worst leader in the history of the universe, and she herself was a brutal dictator, Or The Last Jedi is trying to suggest brutal, centralized power structures are the norm in life, and we should accept them. The beginning of the film witnesses Luke Skywalker throw away his lightsaber, suggesting complacency with the current state of the galaxy. Now let's take this in for just a minute. Luke Skywalker was once a character so convinced good exists in even the worst of people, he turned his evil father, Darth Vader, to the side of the light. What happened over the course of the last 30 years to convince a character this devout that good is no longer worth fighting for? According to The Last Jedi, the presence of the dark side in Ben Solo was too overwhelming for Luke to handle, so he abandoned all hope completely. So the presence of the dark side in a teenager who, until that point, had not acted on any dark side impulses to the detriment of another living being, was worse to Luke than Darth Vader, a murderous tyrant who literally oversaw the complete destruction of an entire planet and the death of billions. The logical leap required to believe this is vast, but the point of a movie like The Last Jedi is not good or even sensical storytelling. Movies like The Last Jedi want their audience to believe in hopelessness in the world. The good in humanity is non-existent, so one should abandon hope and bend knee to their betters. In this case, filmmakers, writers, and politicians. Why should anyone other than the generationally economically privileged who make films and write for media outlets have a dissenting opinion on TLJ? It is time for the Jedi to end, says Luke in the new version of Star Wars. Why? According to this new version of Luke, the Jedi are arrogant and allowed evil to consume them in the form of Darth Sidious. So the errant actions of one or two Jedi at one point in time negate the legacy of a code and way of being that benefited many forms of life for generations? We'd see this sort of nihilistic perspective in modern-day authoritarians, particularly towards the United States. The achievements of the U.S. matter not. The U.S. being a bastion of freedom, a place where immigrants from every walk of life have traveled in search of a better life, does not matter. The U.S. is racist. The U.S. kills people. The U.S. hoards wealth. Are these criticisms valid? To a certain extent. But what is the solution? According to authoritarians, centralized rule and the complete subjugation of citizens is the solution. We should concentrate power into the hands of the very few, and the problem will be solved. So what is the goal of the resistance in TLJ? What are they fighting for at this point? How are they an improvement on the First Order? At one point in TLJ, the Benicio del Toro codebreaker character reveals the fact that the apparently abhorrent arms-dealing inhabitants of Canto Bight are also selling their weapons to the resistance. So what is this movie trying to say? People are bad, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be robbed of your agency and live life as an ashamed peasant, kissing the feet of your superiors. Supporting any cause at all is an exercise in futility and should be avoided. Authoritarian ideologies like fascism, communism, and socialism thrive off their subjugated populations thinking nothing matters. Higher values like spirituality or the Force, family, and valuing life of any species are replaced by base satisfaction with physical security and materialism. The treatment of the Poe Dameron character is one of the more blatantly authoritarian in TLJ. After destroying the Dreadnought at the beginning of the film, a ship described as capable of defeating an entire fleet, General Leia slaps Poe in the face and viciously reprimands him for sacrificing the Resistance bomber fleet to defeat the Dreadnought. If the entire fleet is in jeopardy with the existence of the Dreadnought ship, why does it matter losing a few ships to defeat it? Dameron is subsequently demoted and forced into a position of subservience under a character completely new to the Star Wars universe to this point, Admiral Holdo. Holdo immediately condescends to Dameron, pointing out his demotion, and withholds information regarding her plan to get what is left of the Resistance fleet out of a desperate situation. Let's examine the problem around the mere existence of General Holdo in this film. TLJ could have used an established Star Wars character in Admiral Akbar to take over in this moment. but the script unceremoniously killed him off, without even a mention of his passing. Thrusting an unproven character into the forefront and telling the audience of their greatness without any demonstrable proof. Subjugated people are not supposed to ask any questions of their superiors. If they are told someone is great, the population is supposed to believe it without question. Think North Korea. North Korea has a leader in Kim Jong-un that is a 5-star general with no combat experience and is touted as a god. I view the introduction of Admiral Holdo as similar. She certainly behaves like a dictator, berating her subordinates and telling them to process orders without question. So what is TLJ telling its audience? Questioning authority is bad, and one should do as they're told blindly because individual agency is bad. A shocking development in a franchise that valued individual agency, the fulfillment of destiny, and hope for a better tomorrow. Rose Tico, as a character, is the embodiment of the perfect servant to an authoritarian regime. It's no coincidence the corporate media ran an unsubstantiated propaganda campaign around the actress Kelly Marie Tran. Apparently, Tran was harassed so badly by racist trolls she had to take a break from social media. Yet another claim not backed by any numerical data to support its assertion. I find it interesting the same parties that claim the superiority of science and causes it supports, like climate change, can't produce simple statistical data on the number of racist trolls or even the number of individual racist tweets directed at these apparently afflicted celebrities. Makes sense in the end. Propaganda is not based in fact. Propaganda relies on emotional hysteria and fear to control populations, and dubious facts, in air quotes, to support its claims. We are introduced to Tico when she intercepts Finn trying to escape the embattled Resistance fleet. At first, Tico is in awe of Finn as a hero of the Resistance, but when she discovers his attempted egress, she stuns him and takes him prisoner. Never mind, Finn was attempting to escape for a very good reason: to rid what remained of the Resistance fleet of a tracking beacon that allowed the First Order to trace their movements and aid his friend Rey. Rose arresting Finn robs the character of his individual agency and makes a buffoon of a previously heroic and virtuous character. The end of the film sees Rose Tico crash her ship into Finn's ship as he was attempting a heroic kamikaze run at the enemy to save the Resistance. TLG continually reiterates to its audience that individual agency is bad. Finn is not allowed to grow or develop as a character because growth and development is a bad thing. TLJ values conformity and complacency. Characters are only rewarded when they submit to the will of those around them, and ultimately to the regime they are expected to be subservient to. One of the more maligned scenes in the film was Canto Bight. Many were critical of the scene on the casino planet, calling it unnecessary to the progression of the narrative, but I see it differently. The Canto Bight scene is necessary to the agenda of the authoritarian message the film repeatedly asserts. Take, for example, the liberation of the Fathiers, the part horse, part dog, part cat creatures treasured by Rose Tico. Tico tells a tale of her own slavery as a child, serving arms dealers and living a subjugated life. So why don't Rose and Finn release the child slaves on Canto Bight? Are animals more important than children? According to TLJ, they are. Animals are subservient to people, and it is acceptable to control animals as pets. Children have the potential to grow up and evolve into sovereign beings. Why liberate children, who you may have to work much harder to control and subjugate in the future? One of the more loved or hated phrases, depending on which camp you fall into regarding your opinion of TLJ, is Rian Johnson's subverting expectations. Did the director subvert expectations? In a way. The nonsensical character assassination of Luke Skywalker was unexpected. Killing Snoke so suddenly was surprising, but beyond this, the movie plays it pretty safe. Authoritarians like their subjects to believe they're doing something revolutionary through semantic wordplay, but the outcomes of their action usually fall very much in line with predictable results. Take the Patriot Act, for instance. The Patriot Act had nothing to do with patriotism and everything to do with citizen surveillance and social control. TLJ, a supposedly subversive film, falls into line with a predictable outcome. Kylo Ren and the First Order are very bad, Rey and the Resistance are very good, and the sequence of events is laid to play out like any other film franchise. Simply bastardizing beloved characters and introducing various other plot contrivances does not an unpredictable film make. TLJ is an interesting exercise in propaganda. We are seeing play out in the culture as a whole. Established brands like Star Wars are currently used to assert authoritarian narratives to what they hope is an ignorant, blindly faithful audience. It's important to question the actions of the movie's creators and their sometimes overtly antagonistic behavior. Consumers of media are not obligated to give their time or money in support of a product they don't like. Discretionary spending is not a bad thing, and I encourage audiences to continue to question narratives. The signs are easy to read. If a PR machine is telling you a film is important or revolutionary, the film should be able to show you why it's important. Propaganda is all about telling and not showing. Quality in any deliverable does the opposite and shows rather than tells. If a person shows you they're helping people by starting a business and giving great jobs to members of the community, they deserve your respect. If a person tells you they are helping people but demonstrates no clear action on what they are doing to help others, you should be skeptical. If you don't like something, that's okay. Justification for not liking something is not required. If someone tells you you are required to like something despite your feelings to the contrary, that person is likely pushing an authoritarian narrative. Despite what Star Wars: The Last Jedi told you, it's good to question authority. Your life is yours, and your choices are yours. Don't let anyone berate you for living your life the way you want to.